I grew up Unitarian Universalist, but I had a lot of experiences with other religions growing up. Occasionally, I went to Sunday school with friends after a sleepover. I was part of a Cub Scout pack that was based out of the local Jewish community center. And after 8th grade, I went to an Episcopalian summer camp with one of my best friends. And as part of our UU Sunday school, we sometimes visited neighboring faiths for, to experience a worship service. Now, the camp and the Cub Scouts were great, and Sunday school could be fun, although I remember that the stories I was being told didn't always seem to add up. And I wouldn't be surprised if I frustrated more than a few Sunday school teachers. And there was a point, though, when I was about 8 or 9, that I told my best friend's Baptist mom that I believed that Jesus was the Son of God and that Jesus loved me. And I remember feeling it, but it wasn't really deeply rooted. Something about those implausible Bible stories would never really let that settle in completely. And so I found that experience was fleeting. But for the majority of my childhood, I started to wonder and to question. And for a lot of it, I swung back and forth between agnosticism and atheism before realizing, well, that if I couldn't make up my mind between God maybe existing and God not existing, well, didn't that mean I was agnostic? Now, one of the things that I appreciated most about growing up Unitarian Universalist was not needing to have the answers. Indeed, I love that one of our hymns teaches us that even to question truly is an answer. And I think the ability to question served me well in my growing up and in developing my own religious identity. Around the time I settled on agnosticism was when I started to embrace that experience of mystery, to give myself over to it and just be content with the fact that I can't ever know one way or another. And so embracing mystery, asking questions to explore, embracing mystery became not only central to my beliefs or lack thereof, but I found it to be actually rather enjoyable. And one of the things that I appreciate most about mystery is that it frees me up to explore and find what works for me. And over time, although I still consider myself an agnostic, whereas before I used to think that God didn't exist but I couldn't prove it, over time, I've become much more open to the possibility of the existence of God. Now, that openness doesn't mean embracing things uncritically. I'm pretty clear that there are certain versions of God about which I am definitely atheistic. I do not believe that God is a He. And I do not believe that God made humans in His image any more than everything is created in God's image. I don't believe that God made the earth a few thousand years ago. Really, I don't believe in things that are clearly at odds with what science teaches us about evolution or the origins of our universe. And while it's easy for me to be atheistic about a God that's a bearded old white dude in the sky, that level of certainty becomes much harder to come by when I think about God as a mysterious force behind the universe, which is how many people of many different faiths understand God. As we talked about last Sunday, God is just one of those words we use to describe what is indescribable. And there are lots of beliefs about God that I find meaningful. God as love, God as that still small voice inside of us that calls us to our highest selves, God as the force that is in and between all things, God as a source of healing and comfort. And I like the fact that I can consider them, that I can think about them, even though I don't know whether they have any truth or not. Because I don't need to know whether some version of God is true in order for it to be meaningful to me, for it to be useful to me. Now, some people might call that naive, indulging in beliefs that may have no grounding in reality. But whether you believe in a point system where you gain points for good behavior and lose points for bad behavior, or whether you think the answer is 42, or that our world is held up by 4 world elephants standing on the shell of a giant star turtle, if your beliefs and wonderings lead you to be a better person, I think that's great. Okay, so who got all 3 of those pop culture references? I love you, you beautiful nerds. I also love those of you who didn't get any of those pop culture references.
It's turtles all the way down.
And there's still so much that remains a mystery. You know, even science hasn't provided us with all the answers about our reality, particularly when you look at the subatomic level and all of the things we don't know about the building blocks of matter. And what about quantum physics, where a particle can be in 2 places at once? I mean, how do we even wrap our minds around that? The universe is so wonderfully weird and marvelously complex. Why can't we just appreciate the great wonder of it all? You know, I don't think the reality is we don't need to know all of the answers to appreciate life and to give thanks for what is. Do you need to know how the olfactory neurons inside your nose detect the ester molecules given off by flowers in order to enjoy the fragrances of a field of wildflowers in bloom? Do you need to understand the way that sunlight is filtered and reflected closer to the horizon to appreciate the striking reds, golds, and purples of a sunset? Do you need to know all of the ingredients in a dish to appreciate how delicious it is? Do you need to understand fluid dynamics to appreciate the ripples that spread slowly across a pond? Do you need to understand meteorology to give thanks for rain after a period of drought? Of course not. And of course, on the flip side, some would suggest that to know all of those mechanics, the nitty-gritty details, take some of the wonder out of the world. But I don't think that has to be true either. Often those details are so mind-bendingly weird, as with quantum physics, or elegant, like the golden ratio, that it gives one an even deeper appreciation of our universe, as countless scientists can attest. And of course we should seek to know more, to continue to push the boundaries of our understandings of our universe and unravel some of those mysteries. There's definitely a value there, and yet there will remain questions. There will remain mystery because there are questions that no one can answer. One in particular is what came before the Big Bang? What came before that singularity where the whole universe was contained in that one infinitely small, incredibly hot, infinitely dense spark of energy? As Stephen Hawking explained in one of his lectures, events before the Big Bang are simply not defined because there's no way one can measure what happened at them. And since events before the Big Bang have no observational consequences, one may as well cut them out of the theory and say that time began at the Big Bang. I think that's one of the ways that science and religion often can coexist. What came before the Big Bang? Well, people who believe that there was something there, something, whether it was something out of nothing, that not knowing creates so much spaciousness for what came before. And for some people, I think that's really important. And for some people, it doesn't matter at all. And that's certainly a valid approach. I do not need to know what came before the Big Bang to decide how I choose to live my life. Whether there is a God, whether there's any sort of heaven and hell or reincarnation. I think that whether we believe in any of those things, whether we follow some scripture as the inerrant word of God, sense. My notes there. It's a mystery. I don't have to believe and worry about those facts or new revelations upending my belief system if I embrace the mystery, because it's always in flux. As Iris DeMent sings, no one knows for certain, and so it's all the same to me. I think I'll just let the mystery be. And so do you need to know if there's an afterlife, the possibility of eternal hell or eternal salvation in order to make you behave well here on earth? You know, frankly, a theology that teaches about a God that holds you over the pit of hell, much as one holds a spider or some loathsome insect over the fire, as 18th century Calvinist theologian Jonathan Edwards preached, holds no interest for me. I'm not interested in a God whose wrath towards you burns like fire and who looks upon you as worthy of nothing else but to be cast into the fire. I have so many problems with this sort of God, including that most spiders are actually awesome because they catch flies and mosquitoes and other insects that are far more annoying. But that broader view of God as angry and vengeful, and that humans are as depraved, just doesn't do it for me. That threat of eternal damnation is all that is standing between us and sinful ways. I can't buy it. Nor is that a God that I would find worthy of worship. Our Universalist forebears, they didn't believe in hell, and yet they lived lives that tended towards the righteous end of the spectrum, as did the Unitarians who believed in the inherent goodness of all people. And while they were by no means perfect, if you look at the myriad movements for justice throughout American history, you will often see a disproportionate number of Unitarians and Universalists on the front lines of those movements. And I think, in no small part, that is due to that openness to other truths. People who have the conviction of their beliefs, who believe that they've got the capital T truth and everyone who believes differently is wrong, I found have a tendency to cause great suffering in their efforts to convince others of the righteousness of their beliefs. Not always, but all too often. And as soon as you start fighting over who's right and who's wrong, there's great danger there. The Crusades, the wars between Catholics and Protestants, the forced conversion of indigenous people all across the world, the strife between Sunni and Shia, and between Christians, Muslims, and Jews. And that's another reason I love the mystery, because uncertainty just doesn't generate that kind of religious fervor. God may or may not exist, and your belief system may or may not be accurate, aren't the kind of rallying cries that would convince people to take up arms. But embracing mystery isn't a cakewalk either. Without clear answers, it really calls us to search and make our own meaning. You know, I like what Iris DeMent sings, that I believe in love and I live my life accordingly, but is that really enough? I don't think it is. I think there's so much more. And I think that's what I love about mystery, is that searching and making meaning and trying to find that way through life. It's challenging, but I wouldn't have it any other way. And so how does one address a mystery? UU Minister Gordon McKeeman asks, cautiously, reverently, hopefully, quietly. But what shall I say? Anything, any anger, any hope, any fear, any joy, any request, any word that comes from the depth of being addressed to being itself. Or perhaps nothing, no complaint, no request, no entreaty, no thanksgiving, no praise, no blame, no pretense of knowing or of not knowing. simply be in the intimate presence of mystery, unashamed, unadorned, unafraid. But to keep in contact with that mystery, to keep exploring it, to keep touching it. You know, we know that we can act out of love and compassion, and that doing so tends to bring out greater justice in the universe. We know that the more good we put in the world tends to indicate more good that we'll get back. And so I think there's something there. And one of the other things that I really love about Unitarian Universalism is that seeking, as we seek to find those answers of how to be in relationship with that mystery, is that we don't have to do it alone. As David said earlier, our fourth principle calls us to a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. And our community here provides us many opportunities to explore that mystery through worship and small group ministries, through classes, and just our connections and conversations with one another, sharing our beliefs. To find not answers to the ultimate, but rather the rough contours of existence. Life is a riddle and a mystery. I don't think it's the type of riddle that has one answer. The answer is really, there are countless answers, and the answer is up to the one asking the question. But indeed, in order to find those answers, as nebulous as they may be, it's only through questioning, it's only through seeking that we find them. And through them, through that experience of deepening our understanding, our sense of mystery and wonder, I think that's a really central element to our religious growth, our spiritual development. And so I invite you always to take that mystery with you. Always be seeking, always be looking to expand those boundaries, because there's such amazing stuff out there, and who would want to constrain it and try to put it in some box? The universe is far too beautiful for that.